I had been online even before I sent my last email to FC. I wanted to see that tomb for myself. A regular flight out of my home airport was not available as soon as I needed, not to mention above my budget. So I wound up jump-seating a cargo plane to JFK in New York with an international flight to Tel Aviv. It was a miserable 20 hours of flying, so as soon as I got off the plane in Tel Aviv, I snagged a Rofkov pass so I could travel the public transport, and I headed to my booked hostel. For $50 a night, the place was not too bad. However, I didn't even have time to notice how comfortable the bed was. I was out before I climbed under the covers. 24 hours later, and somewhat rested, I was on the King David train line headed to Jerusalem. I found a quiet seat in the upper deck, sitting next to the window, watching the countryside whiz past. A sharply dressed 30-something Middle Eastern man came up and asked, "May I sit with you?" "Yeah, absolutely." "You're American. Are you here for business or pleasure?" I was slightly annoyed at his directness. It seemed way out of character for an Israeli. "Neither, really. I mainly want to visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the other possible tomb sites of Jesus. There's someone I'm hoping to meet there." "Oh, really? Are you Christian?" I was really taken aback by his directness, thinking it odd and definitely out of character to be asking about religion. After a moment of staring at him and contemplating what and how much to say, he shook his head and apologized. "It's okay. I am a Christian, and I'm hoping to meet up with a former archaeologist and glean some information." He looked at me rather oddly and then refocused his attention out the window. He said nothing else to me except to excuse himself to the lavatory. I didn't see him again, but from that point on, I strangely felt like I was being followed. My hope to see Mr. Herman didn't pan out, but I did visit the tomb of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre as well as the garden tomb nearby, the most likely contenders for the actual tomb of Jesus, according to many archaeologists. I did manage a detour to the Sea of Galilee and, of course, Nazareth for lunch before spending a beautiful evening in Tel Aviv. My flight back was in the early evening the next day, and I wanted to make sure I got some hummus at Abu Hassan's before I left. As tired as I was, I knew I wouldn't be able to jump seat back home, so I splurged for an economy seat. I was expecting the long flight home to be somewhat cramped. However, when I checked in, someone had anonymously upgraded my ticket to first class. The legroom was welcome change. I probably slept most of the way back to New York, but before dropping off, I reminisced over my experience in Israel, which I vowed to go again for a much longer period of time. The garden tomb and the tomb of the Holy Sepulchre were wonderful experiences, but I could only think that it didn't matter because Jesus' bones weren't there. He had risen from the dead, which may be the reason that God's providence concerning the whereabouts of the actual tomb remain uncertain. The tomb is not important and shouldn't be some sort of shrine to be worshipped. A woman on the way to the tomb didn't discover the missing body before the guards went to make their report. The fabrication that was created actually gives logical argument for the truth that the body was not there and that he had actually risen. There are some that might question if he actually died. The truth is, medical experts, using scientific research, examine the circumstances of Christ's crucifixion, including the fact that he was beaten to disfigurement before his crucifixion, as prophesied in Isaiah 52:14 and graphically described in John 19:1-3. They determined that there was a 100% mortality rate of people crucified, including Jesus. There are no record of survivors of a Roman crucifixion, which was a typical death by asphyxiation or not being able to breathe. There is no doubt that Jesus died on a cross. In fact, most evidence points to April 3rd, 33 AD as the most likely date. Not only do we have the testimony, of New Testament authors, but also ancient secular historians like Josephus and Tacitus, who recorded the events in their writings. And actually, the most unlikely compelling support for Jesus' resurrection were the ones who had campaigned to have him crucified. Matthew 28:11 through 15. Look what is said. While the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say, his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. This report gets to the governor. We will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed, and the story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day. In other words, they knew he was not in the tomb, and also knew that the disciples could not have moved the body. He had been resurrected. Internet sources may say that Jesus died of asphyxiation. However, we see that evidence suggests that Jesus did not die of asphyxiation, but rather cardiac arrest, and most likely a cardiogenic pulmonary embolism, which would have caused the fluid buildup in his lungs. Jesus' lung was punctured when he was pierced by a professional executioner to confirm his death. The evidence of blood separating from water when his side was punctured is a major indication that this was the primary cause of death. He died of a broken heart. John was an eyewitness to this. John 19:34. Remember, it was as Jesus was on the cross that he entrusted the care of his mother to the Apostle John, and then announced his completion of the work and died. Notice he died, evidence that he was human, which I will get to next. Anyway, after the crucifixion, a prominent leader, Joseph of Arimathea, requested the body and buried him in his personal tomb, which was sealed and guarded by the soldiers. There is no conclusive evidence to where this tomb is. Joseph's actions were further evidence that support that even the religious leaders who sought Jesus' crucifixion questioned his claim to deity. When Christ resurrected, there was a great earthquake. An angel appeared and rolled away the stone, and the guards that remained ran away. The angel was visible to the guards. He was formidable enough to scare them. By the way, there are secular writings that mention a large earthquake that coincided with the tomb mentioned in Matthew. Since Christ, without a doubt, died and was buried, we must ask the question, was there really an empty tomb? This is a fundamental question that must be answered to prove or disprove that Jesus did in fact rise from the dead. I'm going to leave you for now, but rest assured, I will be back in touch next week. Bible Sleuth.